previous guest writes the first question for the episode. You have the question. I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, let's do it. First question. This is a good one. What was a pivotal moment in your life that led to wanting to pursue a career life of service? Not everyone has a moment like this. I actually do.
However you ended up at one of these careers is the important thing, but what's your journey to it?
That's right. So I did grow up in a family of service. So my dad, several uncles served in the military, actually in the Air Force during the Vietnam era. And another form of service that was common in my family was service in and to the church. Both my grandfathers, both my dad's dad and my mom's dad were pastors, ministers in first Puerto Rico, then Brooklyn, New York, where I grew up. And that kind of service was just as important and just as pivotal an example for me as a kid as each other. So service in the military, service in the community and the church. But the pivotal moment for me that led to me choosing this life of this path of service in the Navy was summer of 1986.
Oh, there was a movie that came out.
There was a movie that came out. You might have seen it. My dad and I drove.
McHale's Navy, right?
That's the one. That's the one. My dad and I drove
down Periscope.
Yeah, that one too. To the theater to see Top Gun at the UA Theater in Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn, New York. And I'll never forget it. We're in the theater watching the movie. And in the middle of the movie, I point at the screen and go, "Dad, that's what I want to do." And he looks at me and he's like, "Son, we're in the middle of the movie. Can we talk about this later?" Fine. The movie rocked my world. And I'll never forget the drive home. On the drive home, I said, "Dad, that's what I want to do when I grow up. I want to be a naval aviator." And he paused for a second. And he said, "Okay, you want to be a naval aviator, Navy pilot." As you know, I was in the Air Force. He was enlisted in the Air Force. He did amazing work for the general at 21st Air Force, McGuire Air Force Base, New Jersey. Dated my mom, long distance, an hour and a half. Anyway, he said, if you want to become a naval aviator, many naval aviators, many Navy pilots went to the Naval Academy. That might be a good start for you. If you want to get into the Naval Academy, remember, I'm 9 years old. If you want to get into the Naval Academy, you're going to have to do a few things. You're going to want to get
one or two
things. You're going to want to get straight A's. You're going to want to be an excellent athlete. You are going to want to be a leader and demonstrate community service to be a good candidate to get into the Naval Academy. Are you going to do those things?
In the car, sure.
That's what I said. I said, "Yes, Dad, I'm going to do those things." And that was the moment that set me down this path. And specifically, I'm thankful to my dad, not for telling me that this is what you must or should do, but riffing off of my idea, my goal, and helping me understand some of the parameters, some of the preconditions that would have to be possible to make that outcome possible and put it back in my hands. He literally said, "Are you going to do those things?" And I was like, yes, Dad, I'm going to do those things as a 9-year-old. And anytime I met someone, I would introduce myself as, "Hey, I'm Jeremy. I'm going to the Naval Academy. I'm going to be a Navy pilot." And I worked backwards from the goal. And it wasn't easy, right? Getting those grades didn't come naturally to me. I was not an athlete. I was undersized. I was underage. I was a year younger than my classmates every step of my entire career. So I didn't.
How does that come about?
I just started school young. My mom brought me to
school young or actually school late?
I was a 4-year-old in kindergarten. She took me to the school. I took a placement exam and they're like, "We think he's ready for kindergarten." And she was like, "Let's do it."
So you were technically advanced for your class by your age.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And that caused it ended up being good for me in one way. It caused other kinds of challenges for me. Socially, I was extremely awkward. I was always small. I was not competitive athletically against my peers ever. I think that I had to work a little bit harder at whatever it was I was imagining for myself, whether it was becoming a swimmer and diver, which I was, or getting those grades, or putting into the minds of people who might be thinking about recommending me for a congressional nomination or teacher to write a letter for me to recommend me for the Naval Academy or the schools I was applying to. I realized that I had to plant in their minds the idea that Jeremy is he's done the work and he's worth me putting my name and reputation on the line for him. And I also didn't have examples in my life or in my family, even though I had a wonderful supportive family and I had family members that served in the military. None of them had gotten that route. And they didn't really understand beyond what my dad told me what it would take. So I kind of had to figure a lot of that out for myself. So I'm thankful for the challenge that path presented to me. And I actually think it's helped me not only through my military career, but through some of the other things that I've done since the Navy. And we'll talk later about the transition. But that was the moment. And the moment I capture in that just really the idea of working backwards from the goal. And that's definitely something that helped me throughout, despite challenges and stumbles. Working backwards from a goal, thinking about what are the preconditions required to make that goal the most likely outcome. And then what's my role in that work? What's my effort level? What's my activity set? Where do I focus my efforts to make those things more likely to happen than not? And I'm thankful for that.
Now, you said your dad served in Vietnam?
During the Vietnam era, he actually tried several times to get deployed from headquarters, 21st Air Force, into Vietnam, to where other units that he was associated with were going. And he tells a story of a flight. He was supposed to go on a rotator flight from McGuire Air Force Base through Vietnam to Spain to visit my mom, who was studying in Spain at the time. And that rotator actually started out and was basically going to do a full rotation. His friend who was flying the C-5 that was supposed to pick him up 2 stops later got shot down over Vietnam, the only C-5 to get shot down over Vietnam, and his friend passed in that flight. And my dad, of course he grieves the loss of his friend, but he also thinks of it like, maybe I was not supposed to be on that flight. Obviously, if he had been on that flight, the rest of this would not have happened for our family, right?
Not trying to make light of it, but almost the whole Buddy Holly, Big Bopper aspect.
Exactly. And he felt comfortable telling me that story at a young age so that I knew and I understood that these are the kinds of things that happen in service. And they did happen to me in service. My close friends of mine who we lost, who I think about often, right? And what if I was with them? What if I was a part of that mission? So I'm also thankful not only that he helped me understand the work that it would take to make some of these goals happen, but the implications or what could happen in service. It's not just fun. It's not a Hollywood movie, right? It's service. And you have to be willing to understand the possible sacrifices that are inherent in service.
How many years did he do?
He did 4 years and returned home and started a family right away. And I did 20 years. And we both celebrate each other's service. There's for us, like the number of years, yes, it was longer for me, but we both really celebrate each other's service, and everyone else in our family who shares that love for what we've done and how the rest of the family also played a part and sacrificed, right? To make our 10 years possible.
That's a huge ancillary component of any of these careers. If you have the willingness to stand on the footprint, so to speak, raise your right hand, whether you do a cup of coffee or you do the entire meal, if you want to put it in analogy, you served. That's the most important thing.
That's right.
With your dad of that era, well, how many years? So you did 4 years. Was there any desire? Did he ever talk about, hey, I'd rather make this a career and just family got in the way, or?
Yeah, my parents laugh about it to this day. My mom gave him an ultimatum. She'd come back from studying in Spain. She's a student teaching in Brooklyn. And she was like, I'm ready to start a family. So it can be with you this year or not.
Not subtle.
Yeah, right. Not subtle. She was so direct. I love it. And he was like, okay, this is my time. This is who I want. And this is the life that we're going to make for each other. And I'm here because of it.
With him though, and why this is interesting to me, because you're of an era where it sounds like your dad really wanted to serve, but he also came out of a time when a war that wasn't popular. And then for now, his children are, how many brothers, sisters? How many do you have?
So I have one brother, one sister.
Were you the youngest, oldest?
I was the oldest. And they both, I went to the Naval Academy. They both went to Wagner College in Staten Island. They stayed close to home. And my brother was an athlete, and I remember trying to encourage him to think about different schools. And my sister was like, no, he's going to Wagner. he's staying home. We gave at the office.
The basket came by. We put our envelope in.
That's right. And then the same thing with other family members later.
When you look forward to that first cup of coffee, as soon as that morning alarm goes off, then Blue Line Roasting is the choice for you. They're a Tennessee-based law enforcement-owned company. They're roasting small batches of premium coffee, fresh, within 48 hours of your ordering, and ship fast so it doesn't sit around getting stale. From Patriot, their light roast, to Failure Drill, their dark roast. They've got something that fits whatever you prefer. Whole bean or ground, it's your call. But Blue Line Roasting is more than just good coffee. A portion of every purchase goes to support law enforcement families who are dealing with line of duty injury or loss. So your morning routine becomes something bigger. Great coffee and real impact. Grab a single bag, try a sampler, or set up a subscription so you're never caught without it. Shipping is always free. And for the listeners of this podcast, use the promo code TRANSITION10 to get 10% off your order. Head on over to bluelineroasting.com and make your morning count.
We do have a legacy. My cousin Patrick Danilchuk is class of 2017, and he became a nuclear submarine officer. And my son, Ruben, 13 right now, if he joins the military, it's still his choice. He's still debating, what he wants to do with his life. He is interested in studying engineering, and he's actually more interested in nuclear power than he is in aviation, which is fascinating. So he gets to talk to cousin Patrick about, life running and operating a nuclear submarine. I know very little of it. So I was like, talk to Patrick.
Where I'm going with it, though, is both mom and dad are supportive of you from that. Granted, your dad put the parameters on you. Hey, you're going to have to do A, B, C, and D. But as far as the support behind it, always both mom and dad are like, hey, if that's your goal, that's your dream, go for it.
The support was absolute. They would come to Annapolis from New York to cheer me on when I was rowing. And they were there for parents' weekends through my service, even though I was stationed in different places and deployed. They were there in droves, the entire family, for my retirement ceremony in 2018. But the way that they supported me was different. So my dad was more the proud supporter, even though he was an Air Force vet, wearing the Navy jackets and thrilled to follow my flying career and then some stuff that I did later. My mom's support was very different. Hers was more, she was a teacher. Hers was more cerebral. And she made sure that I understood the differences she felt than me and my dad about service. She was more of a religious pacifist. And she made sure that we understood why she had those strong feelings. And she also, I'll never forget this conversation. My mom also said to me, Jeremy, I was always surprised when you went into the military and the Navy and the Naval Academy, because I know you have a problem with authority. and that was her form of support for me. Like, she knew me as an individual, not just as a member of the service, not just the uniform. Like, she really, really keenly understood me and the way I think, and wanted to make sure that she was also supporting that part of me and my outlook on the world.
It's funny to me after all these episodes now, how many times that common theme weaves its way through so many of my guests.
Really?
Parents going, you really want to go to the military? You're not somebody who likes authority. Rarely do I get the explanation of, yeah, mom and dad said, you're an authority. You're one of those people who follows the rules and you like being told what to do. The military is going to be perfect for you.
That's good to hear, actually. I'm not alone there.
I want to go back to the whole age discrepancy issue while you were going through school. Never at any point through that process where the school district went, all right, let's figure out how do we realign him to the grade that's more aligned with his age.
So I think the reason why that didn't happen was because academically I was doing well. So typically that comes up.
So there was no struggle. There's no reason to pull you back to align you with your age.
Right. My struggle was the social component.
They didn't care 2 cents.
Nobody cared.
He's playing basketball and he's a foot shorter than everybody.
Exactly right. So that to me was among the first times that I understood that, okay, these are the parameters that I find myself under. These are the challenges that I'm facing. I'm going to do my best. But I also learned early to ask for help when I needed it and not feel like I had to take it all in, like fully internally. And so when I was struggling to say have friendships that were rewarding to me, as well as, good for me academically or otherwise, I felt comfortable telling my parents about that and others. And I only remember this now that I'm having similar conversations with my youngest, Ruben, about how they encourage me to find my people. And those are the same things that I'm talking to my middle school student, my middle school child about now. And I'm so glad for that because Ruben, even though he had a few struggles in his elementary development, when he made the jump to middle school, where we were like, oh no, what's his transition going to be like? He ran with it and he found his people and he started a club of people with like-minded interests. They're readers of a book series, right? So they started writing fan fiction and doing artwork based on that. Based on their favorite books. He joined leadership crew, right? So he's a good example for other kids. He's getting great grades, and in extracurriculars, he's playing lacrosse and he's a goalie, so he's a leader of the defense and he's coming into his own. And I think for him and for me, it started with finding his people, and that was a lesson that I had to learn. It took me a while to get to that point, but once I did, I finally had something to offer, my kid, right? Find your people.
That was where I was going with this. So growing up in Brooklyn, are you going to the New York City schools, public school system? Are you in private schools? And then more importantly, as that young kid who's got this goal of wanting to go to the Naval Academy, are you finding and aligning yourself with any other of your friends who had similar goals at that young age?
So I had to find my people. And for me, that didn't, other than a few very close friends in elementary and middle school, like 2, I didn't really find my people until high school. And I love that you put the question that way because my people were very different from me in terms of which goals they had or how even we thought about the world politically, socially. What we had in common was a focus, a desire to do our best, support each other. And if you looked at us sitting around like the lunch table, we looked like the United Colors of Benetton, right? It was a really cool way to find my people. And it was boys, girls, we were across the spectrum in every way, right? And it's been a long time, actually. It's been a long time since I feel like I've had that kind of super close-knit group of people from different backgrounds, perspective, and every kind of spectrum that you can imagine. And thankfully, a couple of those are still close friends today. Not one of them served in the military, but they're all doing amazing things. Doctors, therapists, lawyers, public servants. Some went into elected, some went into other kinds of office, a sheriff. And so that core group of friends that I found them at Brooklyn Tech High School. And Brooklyn Tech High School is a specialized high school in New York City. It's one of the schools where you can live anywhere in the city, but you've got to pass a certain threshold on a specialized exam to get in. And many of us, even though, a lot of impressive kids went to tech, many of us were social misfits, right? From our elementary and middle school days. But then we found each other. And I feel like that's where I really, really started to thrive and come into my own, while learning about people from different backgrounds and cultures and languages and ways of thinking and perspectives on the world. I'm really thankful for those 4 years.
When you're a young man, as you're approaching graduation, and if I'm following the calendar correctly, you graduated 94
from high school. Yep.
So you got to experience the first Gulf War while you were still in high school. Granted, it ended in a blink of an eye. Did that solidify your desire to serve, or in any way kind of cause you hesitation to serve?
No, solidified. My AP government teacher, Barbara Ross, who's still with us, I love her. I'm so thankful for everything she taught me. I'll never forget when I told her junior year, if the Gulf War is still raging by the time I graduate, I'm enlisting. I don't want to wait 4 more years to play a part in the outcome. And she didn't understand that.
What are you talking about?
And she was, even though she challenged me on the Naval Academy, and just like my mom did, are you sure you're okay with that structure and authority in that way? She was like, I'll take the Naval Academy for you over going over there and in a way that maybe doesn't best suit what you want for yourself, right? In your career. So I'm really thankful for Mrs. Ross.
Ever have any second guessing, doubts, whatever you want to refer to it as, in the sense of, let me maybe look at West Point, going the Army route, or Air Force and their academy?
Great schools. It's only now, right, honestly, that I appreciate how great those schools are. Back then, for some reason, I was locked in on the Naval Academy or not a service academy. So the other schools that I really felt like were good fits and for different reasons were Princeton, Duke, Amherst, and I really feel like in the end it was between the Naval Academy and Princeton for me. And I'll never forget like causing a bit of a ruckus at Brooklyn Tech High School for getting accepted into the Naval Academy in Princeton and choosing the Naval Academy. And one of my friends whose dream school was Princeton was like it was a thing, right? It was a thing. And in my mind, logically, I'm thinking, well, it doesn't really work that way. It's not like the schools have a certain allocation to each high school, but that's not how it felt for her. So it took me some time to really come around to understanding like why she felt that way and not really holding it, against anyone.
You use a great word, allocation, because for anybody who's gone through the process of trying to get into an academy, there are a certain number for geographic regions. Yes. Were you fighting for any other slots, whether it be, and how did it break down? Was it the city of New York? Was it the state of New York? Did it go all the way down to your high school?
Oh, this is a great story. I'll never forget learning that I got the nomination. I had applied first, I think, to Senator Al D'Amato, and learned that Senator D'Amato's allocation was used up for my year. He already had, I think it was 5 New Yorkers at the Naval Academy. So my application got pushed to my local congressman, 11th District, Brooklyn, Representative Major Owens. And I learned that I was basically, I had one more step. It was the interview with the congressman. And I show up in his office and I'm wearing my neat, shirt and tie. And I look over and there's one other student there. And I was like, where are you applying? He's like, Air Force. I was like, Navy. And I'm looking around. I was like, where is everybody else? And we both walk into the congressman's office. And he's like, I'm just gonna put this out there. You guys are it. I've got the allocation. you guys are the only applicants in the district right now for your year. And we both looked at each other like, no way, because just about everywhere else in the country, this step is among the hardest. There are districts where there are 20, 30 perfectly qualified candidates for each service academy, and they are duking it out, and it's so hard to make it out of that step.
I'm going to make a very generalized statement that when I think of the military academies, and I think of, granted, my limited knowledge of New York City and Brooklyn, especially in the mid-90s, I wasn't thinking you were on a long list of kids.
Right.
And I know this sounds judgmental or whatever, but I just didn't think that there would be a lot of kids coming out of Brooklyn who go, I want to go to the military academy.
That turned out to be true. And I'll never forget the next part. He said, when you're there, I will track your progress. I expect you to get good grades. I expect you to graduate, because there's not many of you, right? Clearly, there's one of you each at each school. And he said also, he said, don't pay too much attention to what I say about the military publicly. Some of that is for show. I am extremely supportive of the military. I'm extremely supportive of the service academies. I'm extremely supportive of the two of you making it through and having careers that, that you want. I was like, thank you, sir.
Started immediately in the fall after graduation?
Yes. So we talked about my age and height difference, right? That was intensified at the Naval Academy because so many plebes at the service academies spend at least a year somewhere else in prep schools. Some of them for the athletic teams, they can go to the MAPS or Naval Academy Prep School, NAPS. Some of them go to other top tier schools around the country, Hill Academy, or lots of other Hun Academy, I should say, Hills in Canada. And when I was a plebe, both my roommates were Naval Academy Foundation students who had done a prep school year in between their senior years and the academy. So I was now 2, and in some cases 3 years younger than my classmates. I was a baby. In fact, I was the second youngest member of the class of 98, behind a classmate of mine, Scott Kinkle, who unfortunately passed away. And so right now I'm the youngest member of my year group, from the class of 98 at the Naval Academy, which is really odd. Like I was 17.
I was going to say, were you even 18 when you got there?
I just turned 17 2 weeks before graduating from high school. So I'm a 17-year-old. I'm a brand new 17-year-old with 19, 20-year-old classmates, some of them 21, who had served prior enlisted in the Navy and Marine Corps and other services. So it was that was just another like, who is this baby? Who's this kid, little kid among men and women? And even though it took me a while to mature, I had great examples, brothers and sisters who helped me understand a little bit what the world was like outside the walls, outside the yard, especially those who had served prior enlisted, including my roommate who was from my 2nd through 4th year, Raul David Jimenez, Lieutenant Jimenez, who passed away. We lost in a flying accident, who served and went to the Naval Academy Prep School before coming to the academy. And in many ways, because I'd left home, some of my classmates helped me learn how to become an adult. So I'm really, really, really thankful that I had, again, my second people. I found my people a second time.
Am I interpreting it correctly in the sense that you show up as a really young kid? Not that everybody else was so much older, but there is
those years matter.
Significance. I'm assuming you're probably still undersized, comparatively speaking, but it sounds more like the way you're explaining it, instead of driving into that, you're the baby, you're little, and you're the runt, and we're going to pile more on you. It almost kind of sounds like you got big brothered and people took you under their wings.
That's it. Yeah, Jeremy Markin, my roommate, through my sophomore or youngster through first year, introduced me to his friends who were just older, right? And helped me understand, okay, I'm I might be younger than them, but there's some behavior that I can leave behind, right? And he lived all around the world, and he's just moved back to not far from here, in Palm Springs. So it's nice to be full circle and to spend time with him again after those years, and also turn to each other and comfort each other when we're missing Dave, right?
On the opposite side of that, though, you being that 17-year-old kid, and I'll use the term being a baby still.
Yeah.
How was it first week, first month at the academy for you? Did you ever have that point of like, oh shit, wrong choice?
It was a blur for 2 years, and it wasn't until the summer between my youngster year and second class year, between my second and third year. That was the summer where if you come back from that summer, if you start that first day of your third year, that's your commitment for at least 7 more years. 2 more years at the academy. At that time, 5 more years of service of a commitment. 2 for 7, we called it. And my dad, I don't actually remember this conversation as much as my dad does, but my dad was like, Jay, you ready to go back? And I was like, Dad, I don't know. I don't know if I'm ready to go back. I don't know if like this is actually what I want. And I think it was much more about not just so much the structure, because I already spent 2 years under the structure. It was more my feeling of, hey, I'm coming into my own as an individual, and now a man. And I've got 7 more years scripted for me rather than my ability to decide who I want to work for, where I want to live, how I want to dress, how long I can grow my hair. Turns out that's something I should have thought more about then, because hey, there's not as much up there. And it took me a few minutes at home. Thankfully, I had some time off at home in Brooklyn to think it through. But I was like, you know what? I'm not going to give up on my dream because it's still in front of me. That dream to continue to serve in this way, to be a pilot, and being a pilot sounds fun and glamorous and sexy. I now know that there's more than that. I now know more about the sacrifice that it takes to get to even that point. I know more about the risk inherent in flying because I was now exposed to pilots and naval flight officers from different services. And I was like, I still want that. So that was really what brought me back. The original dream brought me back to that window, that second pivotal moment where I was like, yes, I'm going to continue on this path, continue to work towards what I wanted when I was 9.
Before you ever went to the academy, did you go down any paths of getting associated with flying? I'll call it.
Civil Air Patrol at Brooklyn Tech High School, which is like a junior ROTC organization. It was Air Force focused, but it was aviation focused. And I tried it for a week, and I rebelled against it for the same reason that we're talking about, the structure piece and my ability to choose my path. So I thought, okay, I could do this for 4 years, but it might impede my ability to excel in athletics because there's a time commitment to it, and maybe even academics. So let me put aside Civil Air Patrol, which is not a bad place to be. In fact, the cadet commander of Civil Air Patrol at Brooklyn Tech went to the Naval Academy in front of me and flew F-14 Tomcats. So it can be done. I just thought, okay, I want to get just enough of the traditional student experience at this public high school, which included athletics, so that I can, I think, be the best well-rounded candidate and stay on this path. So I tried it for a week, said no thanks, and went the rest of the way through student government and swimming and diving, and made my way through.
One of the cool things that I like about in hearing stories of my guests who have gone to the Naval Academy, and I'm specifically referring to the Naval Academy because many of them, like you, went in with the mentality of, I'm going to serve in the Navy and I want to be a pilot in the Navy. Mm. But one of the things you have to do once you get to the academy is choose Navy or Marine Corps.
That's right.
Did you obviously got to that opportunity, but was that ever a, maybe I'll go Marine Corps, or was it always Navy?
I flirted with the Marine Corps. After my second year, did Marine midshipman leadership training. It was really Marine leadership training in Quantico, Virginia. And I did really well that summer. And the Marines who were there both the junior officers and even some of the senior enlisted who were there were like, hey, you'd be great at this. You could be a pilot. And the two things that held me back from, deciding on the Marine Corps, first was I had this opinion, I don't know if it was true or not, I don't think it was true actually, that I might have less of a chance of flying what I wanted. And I actually don't know where that came from. I actually don't think that was true. But the other piece was I had this, I looked around and saw all these like high and tight haircuts and thought, I don't think that's my style. So there was an aesthetic.
I'm a hippie at heart.
Right. I'm a hippie rebel at heart. There was a little bit of that, bit of rebellion in me that made me think, okay, I think I'm on the right path with Navy pilot, and I'm very glad that I stuck with it. Nothing against the Marine Corps.
Any issues or anything that stands out to you getting through the academy?
So I think going back to my development and my maturity level, it took me a while to realize that at the academy that, hey, like time management, hitting the books and doing all of that on top of the time commitment of being an athlete, like that was really what I learned by doing, not so much by like a true desire to do that. Because I was still a rebel. I still wanted to hang out. I still wanted to, get away on the weekends. So buckling down and doing the things that didn't seem fun, but that were necessary to get it all done, was really the thing for me. So I did, towards the end, I struggled a little bit academically at the academy and had to just grind it out to graduate, keep my pilot slot, and do well enough to get wings. So I ended up flying helicopters, and yeah, I went in wanting to fly fighters, but by that time I realized that I was just still lucky to be here. So very, very, very happy to have gotten that, to have been assigned as a helicopter pilot, and flew amazing missions that I'm thankful to have been a part of. And even today or yesterday and Friday, watching the Artemis II return and seeing Navy MH-60 Sierra helicopters from HSC-23, my old sister squadron, perform the transfer from the capsule to the USS John P. Murtha was awesome. Full circle moment for me, and watching with my son, who is fascinated by that stuff, and letting him know, hey, that's kind of what your dad did.
When you talk about the grind, did it actually get to a point where any type of academic bubble, I'll call it, where you could have not graduated?
Oh yeah. My senior year, I was on that bubble, and it's irresponsible, but like it was an art class that I blew off. And you would think as a rebel, I would love the art class. It was crazy that was a thing.
I'm actually thinking, why at the Naval Academy are they making you take an art class?
It was an elective. I had enough credits to graduate. I just needed I had enough credits to graduate. I needed enough credits to fill out the term.
Got it.
And so my doing well in high school and the AP classes basically allowed me to start as the equivalent of a sophomore. So it was like the art class didn't have anything to do with service, right? It didn't have anything to do with my next steps. So I kind of like didn't apply myself there the way I knew I needed to. And that was the thing that almost derailed me.
What'd you end up getting your degree in?
Political science. So poli-sci and Spanish. So I merged the two, not only learning the language and learning about comparative politics, but really trying to understand and study what was happening in the Western Hemisphere, and developing my own model in my senior year. And this is what I was applying myself towards. I was really interested in this, to understanding the dangers of political coups, and when governments topple themselves, and the economic preconditions behind those, social and economic preconditions that might lead to some of that military and political instability. I was fascinated by that, and I actually built a research design that would have been a really good platform for, say, like a graduate degree program. And I saved that, and some of what I learned and discovered there kind of helped me understand the world around me when I was deploying, when I was going into hotspots, and thankfully not necessarily combat where I was at risk of getting shot at, but still combat zones where, hey, you still got to be careful, and you got to, and I enjoyed understanding some of the things that were going on behind the scenes that led us as the instruments of foreign policy to be deployed there.
Would you say there was any forethought or thought of post-military life and career that drove your decision for that degree program?
Yeah, it was a desire to not serve 20 years in the Navy and maybe go into government and politics and maybe elected office. And I'll fast forward all the way to today. That's not something my wife's interested in. And so I'm reminded of my dad, right? My dad and my mom, and my mom giving him an ultimatum. My wife is giving me that same ultimatum. You might, Jeremy, have this desire or dream to run for office. That's not my desire. That's not my wish. And I respect that. And I have friends who have done it who are in elected office today. And she's actually right about this part. The way that in the election cycle, not only do they get many times dragged publicly and on social media, their families do too. That's not fair. Without going into the politics itself, it's not fair that we as a society think that that's okay, right? To potentially like inflict real harm on people just because they want to serve in that capacity. And my friends who are in that position, they're telling me that it's hard to find more candidates across the political spectrum who are willing to submit themselves to that kind of pressure and attention. And it's true. It's true. And my political career is a victim of that, but that's okay because there's a lot going on that I'm happy about, proud about, that my wife and I are building together that I right now am much more excited about than any previous idea about.
But that is a huge component because your desire to want to serve military service, but even service, politics, and political, that's not your family's desire.
Right.
Your kids and your spouse are ancillary victims of your desire to serve that way, especially more towards an elected official who's now got a public persona.
Right.
And now in connection with that, your family's ability to just live their normal life is completely impacted.
That's right. Yeah. So now I understand my dad's perspective, right? When my mom shared very directly, very clearly what she did and didn't want for her family life, and that echoes for me. And I really have no desire to go, I put another way, because that echoes for me, I really understand how my wife's perspective like matters for our future. A happy wife, happy life. It's like, it's beyond that. It's like, we really need to think about what we want to build together that we agree on. That's going to be good for us, good for our kids, good for a future where maybe we have, more time to share and travel. And that's where we are right now. And that's a really good place to be.
The spouse aspect is undoubtedly important. For me, I always think about, man, how many of these kids who are children of more famous political personas, president, that type stuff, those poor kids, I mean, their entire development, you talk about, you were kind of stunted being a year behind everybody. Yeah. Can you imagine what that life has to be like? And then trying to go off to college and you got Secret Service guys, I'm just hanging out here. I'm blending,
Exactly.
It's just got to be so hard for those kids.
Right. Yeah. That, and if you would have to layer that on top of the pressures that kids are facing anyway, because they even feel like their lives are on display because of the impact of, the black mirror that we all carry in our pockets. My son is a 7th grader who he's very involved, right? We talked about that. And he goes to school dances. And I'm glad that he goes, right? And he's got a core group of friends and they meet up and they have a good time and they're off. And when I asked him how the dance went, did you guys dance? No. And it's funny to us. Like, why did you go to the dance and not dance? And it wasn't until he and I were driving and we were listening to a podcast, and I actually can't remember which one it was, but the topic came up of people not dancing, people not socializing the way that we used to years ago. And when dancing came up, the speaker said, yeah, it's because people, know that the second they step out on the dance floor, it's on camera, it's on social media, and it's being dissected that minute. And we're driving, and I looked at Ruben, I was like, is that true? He's like, oh yeah, totally. So it's like, oh my God, like I loved dances at Brooklyn Tech, right? And I know that Ruben and his friends are having fun together, but if they don't even feel like they can cut loose like that because, it's going to be broadcast, my goodness, I feel for them.
It gets talked about a lot, and I really don't know if there's a way to truly put a measurement or a value on it, but we got to grow up in a time where everything wasn't recorded.
Yeah.
And we were allowed to be stupid, immature, young kids, do things, say things that, yes, in hindsight, you were a dumbass, but at least there's no permanent record of it beyond anything your friends might remember.
Yeah.
that they'll never forget.
That's right.
While you were in the academy, did you get touch points to actually getting into the aviation aspect of it? Did you finally, were you in an airplane type deal while you were in the academy, or does none of that happen while you're in the academy?
No, it does. There's a program for all midshipmen in between their first and second years, pro-trimmed or core-trimmed, depending on where you're coming from, where you actually get to fly. And so I went to Pensacola. Me and my buddy were in our flight suits and shades, and we were doing the performative Top Gun stuff and taking pictures, and got to fly. And that was another bit of confirmation for me. And I think the service academies and even ROTC are really smart about that by exposing you to different parts of the Navy and Marine Corps so that you get a taste of it. So some of us, like me, knew what I wanted to do and it reinforced that. And some others are exposed to something that they didn't expect and realized that they could want to do that. So for me, flirting with the Marine Corps was one. And then when I rode a submarine overnight, that was a really cool experience, but I knew I did not want to do that for a career.
This is not for me.
That's right. And that part of the academy experience can't really be replicated anywhere else. It's like the best internship possible because even if it's only a short amount of time, you're spending time in the field with Marines, you're spending time in an aviation squadron with pilots, maintainers, naval flight officers, submariners, and feeling like, okay, this is part of my future. This is something that's possible. This is a possible outcome for me.
Do you come out of graduation and heading into flight school knowing that you're going to go rotary, or are you still on the bubble, or is it even not decided yet?
When you graduate from the academy, you know that you're going to flight school, at least when I went through, and then there was a primary training syllabus for all aviators. And after the first phase was when we found out whether you'd be going into the jet pipeline, the multi-engine like C-130s or P-3s pipeline, or the helicopter pipeline, right? Today, there's actually a new version of the flight school experience for those who know they might want to become helicopter pilots, allowing them to go right into helicopter training, which is interesting. And that's very new. I don't know if I would have chosen that. I'm glad that I got the broader experience because I got a fixed wing airplane qualification, even though I went helicopters, which allowed me to come back as an instructor in airplanes. So I became a fixed wing flight instructor at an Air Force base, and I got to fly jets. So I didn't fly a fighter jet, but I got to fly a twin engine trainer jet. And my students were Navy, Marine, Air Force, and international students who went on to fly everything from C-5 transports to F-15 and F-16 fighter jets, Navy F-18s, of course, Navy and Marine helicopters. And I was even in charge of a small unit called the Fixed Wing Qual program, where we brought in Navy, Marine, and Coast Guard helicopter pilots that were going into fixed wing Air National Guard units and turn them back into airplane pilots. And that was a really cool full circle moment for me to take some of my background as a pilot, a well-rounded pilot, and train helicopter pilots to become fixed-wing pilots. And that was just so much fun.
The aspect of going then to helicopters, did that get imposed on you, or did you actually get to choose which route you were going to go?
I put in my preferences. I asked for...
There's a moment in life when you realize it was never about you. Grind, spelled GRND, is different. There's no I in it on purpose, because the mindset was never about ego. It's about the mission. Started by a former Army Ranger, it's not about where you are. It's about how you show up. Different lives, different pressures, but the same mindset. Grind isn't clothing you wear just to look good. It's a reminder of why you keep going when it gets tough, and you keep putting in the work when no one's watching. For the early mornings, the late nights, the reps that no one sees. This isn't just fashion, it's fuel. Because real work isn't loud, real effort doesn't need applause, and real purpose doesn't quit. Head on over to thegrndcollective.com and use the promo code TRANSITION15 for 15% off your order.
I changed my preferences, actually. I think I asked for P3s because some of my instructors were P3s, and I shifted, and they convinced me, oh, you don't want to go on a ship, right? You want to be land-based. The week that I submitted for that stage, that phase change, I'm pretty sure there was one jet slot that went to someone in Pensacola. And I think everybody else went helicopters my week. So it was okay, this was kind of, I don't know if it was meant to be or whatever, but I could have performed incrementally better in flight school, in the first part of flight school, and still gotten helicopters. So I was assigned helicopters, even though helicopters was third or fourth on my preference list. And I was happy. I'm a naval aviator, or I'm a student naval aviator. I'm going to get my wings of gold. And by that time, I had learned a little bit more about the missions that helicopters do, search and rescue. And I was coming into my own by then, again, a rebel, voice of my mom in my ear, thinking about the types of missions that I might be called on to do, and feeling okay, search and rescue, life-saving, sounds like something really worthwhile and something I want to be a part of, even in a combat setting, right? Nothing wrong with dropping bombs and launching missiles. That's part of the military experience, and we need that capability and capacity. But if my role within naval aviation involves life-saving or providing humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, which I did a couple of times, that's rewarding. That's worthwhile. And that starts to align with my individual values within the construct of wearing the uniform. And I absolutely ran with it.
When did you get to your first squadron?
I got to my first squadron in 2000. Yeah, in 2000. And so I had gone through the upgrade process to become an aircraft commander at a young age. I was a 24-year-old helicopter aircraft commander, which was kind of unheard of.
If anybody's not following you, you're going to do everything at a young age.
Everything at a young age. And guess what happens next? 9/11. My detachment, 2 helicopters, 6 pilots, about 30 of us total in the unit.
Where are you stationed at this time?
In Norfolk, Virginia. Search and rescue, and attached to the USS Baton, which was an amphibious assault ship that carries Marines. We had finished our workup cycle in the summer of 2001. We were scheduled to deploy September 19th of 2001 on the USS Baton and pick up the 26th Marine Expeditionary Unit in the Carolinas. 9/11 happens, and I'm in Virginia, and I was at home asleep because I was going to get my last night qualification a week before deployment. And my roommate, she was the schedules officer. She calls me up and wakes me up. She's like, Jeremy, been trying to get through for an hour. You okay? I was still groggy. And she's like, you don't know? I'm like, no, what? I'm still waking up. She's like, she knew I was from New York. Turn on the TV. I turn on the TV, and I'm still on the phone with her. And I'm watching as the second tower falls. and this is my hometown. This is where I grew up. This is my beacon for, north, south, east, and west. And she said, your flight for tonight is canceled. Pack your bags, get to the squadron. We think you're deploying today. Hang up. Most of my stuff was already packed because I was scheduled to deploy a week later. So I'm on my way to base, and I didn't live far away from base. I'm trying to get through to my dad. My dad is working in downtown Brooklyn. He used to work in Manhattan. He actually used to work at the World Trade Center at a bank, and he transferred to Brooklyn. And I just need to get through to him. And phones weren't working. Finally get through as I'm driving through the gate. And thankfully, I stopped and slowed down to show my ID because we had gone to Force Protection Condition Delta. So thankfully, I didn't try to breeze through, or else I would have been shot. My deployment would have been over before it started. Dad answers, and I said, Dad, I'm deploying today. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know when I'm coming back. I love you. Bye. And I got to the heliport. The birds were spinning, but it was weird because I could tell there was not a lot else going on. And I had driven through Norfolk International's airspace, under it. No planes. So the only noise are our helicopters on our squadron, and the other squadrons, our sister squadrons, actually closed down. So our squadron had our birds spinning, and I grabbed my bags, I jumped in the back, and we landed pier side on the USS Baton backwards and got underway, and went down to North Carolina to pick up our Marines. The other part of our squadron jumped on board the USS George Washington and provided search and rescue so that they could pick up a modified air wing and provide some cover for New York City. And thinking back to not my 9-year-old self, but maybe my high school self, even though I was scared because everything was burning around us and my city was attacked, I remember feeling a small sense of calm that I was in the right place at the right time to play a role in the outcome of an attack on our soil. And that even though I was, crying myself to sleep watching the impact of the rubble of the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, and turns out losing another one of my classmates, Darren Pontel, was lost at the Pentagon on 9/11. Crying myself to sleep in my stateroom. My roommate in the stateroom just asked if I was all right, and I just kept the TV on. I kept the TV on for I think months straight because I something switched, right? The news cycle shifted for me into there's a threat, everything is changing by the minute, and I need to understand as much as I can while we're steaming across the Atlantic and then through the Red Sea and then into the Red Sea and then Indian Ocean. And then this is about a month later, this is October now of 2001, again, playing a part in the outcome. Our Marines took off from the USS Baton, linked up with the 15th Marine Expeditionary Unit, and, landed in Kandahar, started to link up with friendly forces and took the fight to the bad guys. And as hard as it was, I was just thankful to be there, thankful to be trained, thankful to have felt ready, to have been given the opportunity to do the workups and to go through everything that we've talked about over the last hour, even at that age, and just really, really scared and excited at the same time, thankful that I've been trusted with the mission.
So you're there a month later.
Yeah.
What's the op tempo like? Are you guys just really busy, or did you get there and kind of okay, now let's see what happens?
The op tempo was crazy because we were just shuttling Marines and their equipment, into staging areas in Pakistan, and then they were making their way into Afghanistan, right? And so the other part of the op tempo was interesting in that we had developed this battle rhythm where we would mostly fly at night, and that was good for us because of our expertise with night vision goggles. And And then in the evenings, there was always this, what was called the ops intel brief. And the commanding officer would take reports of what was happening really around the world at this point, to understand like our role in supporting the mission in Afghanistan. And as a 24-year-old interested in all this stuff, I was just glad to be in the room, right? And I would hear little bits and pieces about what the next day or the next 24, 48, or 72 hours would bring so that I could help my detachment be ready with the right equipment, whether or not we would be loaded with weapons, what kinds of configurations we would need, whether we're providing search and rescue for the Harriers that are flying, or are we doing cargo runs in and around the strike group to keep everyone supplied and prepared. And we did stuff like mundane stuff, like we delivered ice cream, right? We delivered mail. All of those are essential logistical components to a big operation. And we were the 26th Marine Expeditionary Unit, the Baton Amphibious Ready Group. And we were rolling up under this much, much, much bigger operation. And it was an amazing learning experience, as well as heavy on our hearts because of the impact of what we had just lost in New York and in Pennsylvania and in DC. And what we saw, what was happening around us, like history was evolving, like right in front of us.
Because of the unknown aspect at that point in time, when you first deploy, are you giving any type of anticipated deployment length? Or was it like, hey, we're just deploying, we'll figure out when it's going to end when it ends?
Yeah, we went from hoping for a 6-month deployment to not knowing what. And because at the time, our squadron actually had, in a weird timing, too many pilots, but not enough opportunities to deploy. That deployment for me turned out to be a 3-month deployment. And I high-fived a couple of my friends that were coming from Norfolk to execute, right, the rest of the mission. So that was actually, I would have stayed forever, if I needed to, right? But it was also nice to make sure that everyone in our age group and my year group had that opportunity to rotate through to experience what we were doing. And again, that group, I found my crew, I found my people, have gone on to do some amazing things in and out of the military. And those were our formative years. We all grew up a lot together fast.
It's crazy to think about you saying that there were a certain number of pilots who they needed to make sure got deployment experience, so to speak.
Sure.
And probably in the mindset at that time, this isn't going to last long, just like the last time.
Right.
So you ended up getting a short deployment because, hey, we need to get other people through. If they would have been able to know long-term, who knows how long that first deployment would have been. How many, where I'm going with this is because you've already mentioned that going into the academy, hey, I'll give you my 4 years. I'll give you my 1 5-year click after that. And then I'm going to get out. Other things were on your mind. Where I'm going with this was how many deployments in that first 5 years? And then when do you change and go, nope, I'm making this a career?
So I did 3 deployments in those first 5 years. And it definitely was the shift that I experienced after 9/11 that helped me understand that this mission isn't yet over. It's taking a lot longer than any of us anticipated for a lot of reasons. That was the shift that shifted me from, I'm going to do just 5 years and get out and start my government or political career, to I'm where I need to be. I'm trained up. I have something to offer. I'd like to help train the next generation of pilots to do some of these missions and other missions as well. And from that point on, time, like my experience through time shifted into, oh my God, I've served 10 years. By the time I've served 10 years, well, 20 years doesn't seem like much longer, especially since I have these other opportunities in front of me to still play a part in the outcome of this extended war, right? We've really gone through a lot in the last 20 years. And so it really, it's almost like those first few years seemed to take forever until I was ready to deploy. And then from my first deployment, for the next 18 years went by like a blur for me, an absolute blur. And my commitment to the mission was, I think, rooted emotionally in being from New York, the impact on my city and the country, and a desire to stick it out and to kind of wrap that end to end. I'm jumping ahead a few years in a couple of assignments. In 2011, I was the officer in charge of a 2 helicopter unit, just like the one that I had first deployed on. And we were doing more of a combat logistics mission rather than the pure search and rescue mission. And we were attached in the Red Sea and then in the Indian Ocean and the Northern Arabian Sea to the USS Carl Vinson. And what happened on my birthday, May 2nd, 2011, but the mission that got bin Laden. And I'll never forget it because like I was in the habit from 2001 of like watching the news like all the time. The night of May 1st into May 2nd, I was in a stateroom by myself because I was the OIC. I was actually the senior line military officer on the ship. And I wake up in the middle of the night and I left the TV on and I see the president saying, "We got him. We got bin Laden in a raid in Pakistan." And he was flown to the USS Carl Vinson. And I'll never forget it. I said, "What?" I actually had a portal in my ship because it was a supply ship. And I looked out my window, went like this, and it's the USS Carl Vinson. Oh my God, it's right there. So that day we were scheduled to resupply them. And I had my detachment drop me off before the mission. And I went on board the ship and I was like, "What is going on? What happened last night?"
Nobody told me.
Right. They were smart not to tell us, right? Because we were not a part of that mission. But our claim to fame is that we helped keep the ship on station through that part of its deployment so that it could play a very important part in that mission. And again, another full circle moment for me. It took 10 years to get to that point. And without debating the merits of the timeline or the politics or anything like that, I definitely had a sense of pride in what we did as a unit, the vagabonds of HSC 21 Det 1. And we together went through some hard times ourselves in a period of uncertainty to stick together, keep the mission going, keep the Vinson charged up, and their ability to stay on station was preserved. And that was our contribution. And I was really, really happy to be a part of it.
You mentioned that 10-year period, and you're in a real unique window of service because you literally, deployed at the start of it, and you were, I'm assuming, in that rotation cycle that probably, if I'm looking at it from an outsider's perspective, possibly never slowed down for you for those 10 years.
An absolute blur.
Where I'm going with this, though, is you've now crossed that bridge. You've said to yourself, "I'm going to do an entire career behind this." You hit that 10-year mark. Are you able at any point to, I'll say, slow down enough to at least try to plot what you want to come out of your career? Does that kind of make sense?
The Navy still, and the military still assigns you based on the needs of the service. So you're always subservient to the needs of the service. That never goes away. What I was doing at that point was realizing that there was a window where I could go the command route, and I wasn't selected for command, and that's okay. I had that leadership opportunity that I really, really wanted, that OIC small unit, 2 helicopters, 30 people mission, our mission accomplished, was very satisfying for me. And then at that point, when I realized that the command route wasn't available to me, and I still wanted to serve that 20 years, I did start to think about what I wanted within the construct of the needs of the service. At the time, my family life really became a thing that I needed to consider more and more. So my wife was amazing. She was patient. She was there and holding it down with a special needs kid at home. All right. So we haven't talked about that yet. So David, our eldest, named after my roommate that we lost, Raul David Jimenez, He's a miracle baby. He was born. She was only 25 weeks pregnant when he was born. He was 1 pound, 11 ounces. He was the size of my hand, and he's a miracle baby. He's statistically, especially at that time when he was born in 2009, statistically one of the smallest babies to survive. And he's 16 years old right now, and he's doing really well compared to a very, very rough start, including a brain hemorrhage. And today he lives with cerebral palsy and epilepsy, and he's a wheelchair user. And my wife was just amazing every single step of the way to keep him alive, to coordinate his care. And that was something that as she was lifting a heavier burden by doing all of that while she's managing a home with a husband deployed around the world. And then a second child, right? The second miracle baby. Ruben comes into the picture.
Are you guys still stationed and living in Virginia?
We're in San Diego. And falling in love with San Diego, right? Loving not only, the weather's beautiful and the people are great, but we actually also fell in love with really the support that we were getting from, say what you want about where we live, but there's an amazing set of services that are available to families like ours. If you know where to look and how to reach out for it, we had to come up with a new community we had to integrate ourselves into this new community of special needs families to understand and to navigate that system, which my wife, Yolan, does amazingly well. And she even helps and coaches other families on how to do it when they're getting started. And so
was that switch from the East Coast to the West Coast by choice?
It was actually when David was born that I got my orders to the West Coast. And it was the orders that took me to the squadron where I became the OIC and completed that mission in 2011. So that those 2 years were very, very tough for us as a family. And then back to your question about kind of crafting the rest of my career, what we did to help stabilize ourselves, and it just so happened that we were in San Diego, was apply for, and we applied for the Exceptional Family Member Program, David being the exceptional family member, so that we could help him with a more consistent continuity of care. Let's keep him with his doctors. Let's keep him, and his two main clusters of doctors were at the Naval Medical Center, San Diego, Balboa, and Rady Children's Hospital. And it turns out we learned that there's a lot of overlap between the two hospitals because of their proximity and their quality. So it was like, let's stay here. Let's keep him in this system while we navigate the rest of my Navy career. It also helped me to think about that 20-year mark, as some people think about 20 years and then they're like, let's do another tour. Let's do another tour after that. And that's fine. And I have no issues with that. For us, it was much more about, let's work backwards from that 20-year date to set ourselves up for, do we want to stay here in San Diego? What does that look like? What work can I be doing in the Navy that can help set us up for that? And what else should I be doing to prepare for the transition? So it was, again, by just dealing with what was presented to us.
Right.
It's tough, right? She's an amazing mom. And I've learned from her, she's an amazing wife and best friend. That, okay, it's time to start to reprioritize here so that I can still give the Navy everything that I've promised and really owe for what I've been given, while we think about what's best for the family. So it was taking assignments in San Diego, and I was doing staff work. So I went from one staff to another, and I really got good at staff work. I wasn't flying, even though I might have been on an aircraft carrier and other people are flying, or I worked for the region and supported different kinds of operations. I got really good at understanding the system that our admirals were running and helping them succeed. And that became my new thing. So project and program management, working for staffs, working for admiral staffs. That became basically the last 8 years. 6 years. The last 6 years of my career were basically doing that. The other
When
thing
did you get to go to flight instructor school?
So that was in between my flying assignments. So I got to become a flight instructor from 2003 to 2006.
And where was that at?
That was at Vance Air Force Base in Enid, Oklahoma. Enid, America. Great flying, great people. A Brooklyn City kid. I wouldn't have expected that I would have enjoyed it so much. I really did. And I miss it, actually.
So you knew there was no way you were going beyond 20.
Right.
Barring any, for the most part, the plan was 20 and I'm out.
That's right. And so one way that I worked towards that goal was when I got to one of my admiral staff assignments, working for Navy Region Southwest. This is 2011 to 2015. I was talking to my wife about business school because it was because we already had to talk about government and politics, right? So I was thinking, okay, with my mind,
was it really a talk or was it you just told?
I was told. I was voluntold against it. I thought, okay, I have an interest in business. I have a dream, an unrealized but also undefined dream, maybe to someday own a business. But maybe before then, I just need to learn the language of business. And maybe before then, maybe after learning the language of business, find a good company to work for and learn a new structure. So that was kind of the very, very rough, nebulous idea behind it. And I was thinking about a couple of schools, and my wife, being from Michigan, said, the University of Michigan has a really good business school, right? So I looked it up. Oh my God, U of M has a really good business school. And I'm on the way home from work from downtown San Diego to Normal Heights. And I hear this was the first time that they had aired this commercial. I was listening to NPR on the way home. Now, for the first time in Southern California, the University of Michigan Ross School of Business Executive MBA program in Los Angeles starting this fall. And I raced home and I got on the phone and called the admissions office and spoke to Eric Davis, who's still a friend and mentor of mine. And he answered. And I was like, I just heard your ad. Tell me more about this executive MBA program. He's like, we just ran that ad.
Yeah, we're still up. We're getting it up and running.
Exactly. And I was in. I started my application that night, and I interviewed, and somehow was able to make the case that I deserved to be in this program, which was still at the time, because it was the first time that they were doing it outside of Ann Arbor, an experiment, really. Can we pull this off? And it turns out that there are more University of Michigan alumni in Southern California than anywhere else outside of Michigan. So it's already a hub. And what the style of this program was a weekend residency program once a month. The same professors that teach in Ann Arbor fly out to LA and teach the same coursework. So there is no difference in the coursework or the rigor or anything. And I became a part of the very first cohort. So I was doing that while I was full-time working for an admiral, working at the region. And I had a boss who was really supportive of me because he remembered when he was getting his MBA, when he was active duty, he had a boss that was not supportive. And I'll never forget Joe Stuyvesant. I'll thank him forever for supporting me and allowing me to do that. I would take leave once a month for a couple of days, go up to LA, and he knew that I was also doing a lot of work, midweek and in between residency weeks. So that's how I learned the language of business. That's how I helped to think about a future outside the Navy. I started to think about an identity apart from myself in uniform. I started to think of myself not in terms of my role as a Navy helicopter pilot, but what kind of leader do I wish to be, where I want to work, what I want to do. And it was a great start for me. And those classmates, again, I found my people are there for us as a family. They knew what struggles we were going through as a special needs family. And I had other classmates that went through struggles of their own, including one of my really good friends who lost her babies. She went through a really significant loss during the program. And we were just there for each other in such an amazing, beautiful way. We became siblings more than anything. And I didn't imagine that I could experience that type of camaraderie outside the military. And I'm really, really, really glad I did, because those are the friends and family members now, new family members who are there for us in this phase. So that was part of my transition story.
Not taking anything away from the programs that are out there that are more geared towards, marketed to the veteran community. And they're just some great programs. I'm not taking anything away from them. But this doesn't sound like it was a program that was marketed or geared specifically to veterans. It was simply University of Michigan, MBA program offered in LA. This may even be a rhetorical question, but do you think it helped you with planning and preparing for your transition, not being in a cohort of primarily veterans?
It helped me in a way that's similar to me being the runt when I was younger, being younger than everyone else, feeling unprepared, feeling like others are bigger, stronger, a year ahead of me. That I'd already operated in that environment. So it helped me because my classmates and my professors were amazing, accomplished people in the fields of technology, finance, science, academia. They were advanced in their careers. Like, not only were they, many of them, not only a few years older than me, they were several stages ahead of me in their careers. They were directors becoming VPs. They were public leaders who were now being thought of as, mayors, right? In their cities. And I think I'd done that before, right? I think I'd kind of like punched up above my weight and allowed these relationships to grow in that setting so that I could learn from them. And then what I was surprised by was, in this case, they also wanted to learn from me. So I think earlier I was absorbing a lot from my classmates and to help me like punch above my weight. In this case, in this academic setting, I think I confessed to someone that I wasn't comfortable like sharing my stories. And one of my classmates were like, no, you've done a lot. Like we do want to hear what you've been through and how you lead sailors and the struggles that you've experienced as a service member. Like we don't understand any of that. And you've dealt with life or death situations. You've dealt with missions that are of real substance and real benefit to others. And they wanted to hear about it. And that was wonderful. That helped me come to my own, I think, as a leader, to not only learn from them, but to be comfortable sharing some of what I had done.
No component of the program required you to go back to Ann Arbor?
Yeah, it did. It was a mix. So we started in Ann Arbor, and then we did our monthly classes and residencies in LA. And then there was a week that we spent together in LA, although the future cohorts spent another week in Ann Arbor. And then we also were able to graduate in Ann Arbor in the big house. And that was actually something that I led. The original plan was to have a graduation ceremony in Los Angeles. And a couple of our classmates like, well, didn't we talk about graduating in Ann Arbor? And I raised my hand and I asked, hey, can we revisit that? And it took some doing. I had to go
So the school's plan when that first cohort started was to host the graduation in LA.
And I represented the LA cohort to negotiate with the Ann Arbor cohort, and then through the head of this program to the dean, who had to then take our request to the university to accommodate us to graduate in Ann Arbor. There actually had to be a couple of date changes associated with graduations in Ann Arbor to accommodate the LA cohort. And we did it.
Michigan doesn't have big graduating classes. No big deal at all.
No big deal.
Just send out a few emails, reschedule it.
It was nice to be heard and nice to be trusted by my classmates, my cohort, to help make the case for it. And the case that we made was, not only is this what we expected, but we really do feel like a part of the university family. And we wanted to have that experience in Ann Arbor to celebrate together with the Ann Arbor cohort, because we had become close with them. Our professors were the same professors across the two cohorts. And I think it ultimately helped. I don't really know about this part of the impact, but I hope that it helped solidify the concept of the satellite campus in LA, which has now turned into a permanent campus. The University of Michigan actually has a new campus building in LA now.
They still get students to go back to Michigan, though, to actually do the graduation process?
I believe they do. I believe they do.
If I'm going to graduate from the University of Michigan, I want to walk at their graduation.
That's right.
Graduation in relation to your end of service. How much time did you have?
I graduated in 2014 and I retired in 2018. So I had 4 more years to serve. And some people who are transitioning think about, say, graduate school or education after taking off the uniform. I decided to do it before to, I wouldn't say accelerate my transition. I would say just to bring some parts forward a bit. What I did in between graduation and my Navy retirement was I started to volunteer in projects and organizations that I felt passionate about. And many of them did not directly relate to the military. That was a great experience. So I won a scholarship from what was then called NSHMBA, National Society of Hispanic MBAs. They evolved into Perspanica. After winning an NSHMBA Scholar Award, I was invited to join the board of the San Diego chapter. And that was a mission that I felt passionate about, bring more Hispanics into the ranks of MBA graduates. Because when you look around, any diversity that you see is still trailing in that respect. So out of 100 of us, there were, really only 2 of us that identified as Hispanic. And it was like, wow, like that, what can we do to put the word out that this is something realistic, this is something attainable for more people. And I am really thankful for that opportunity. And then some other organizations later, like the San Diego Workforce Partnership, which aligned with some work that I was doing at that time. And then I also got involved with 0800, which is an amazing transition organization based here in San Diego. Ashley Kemak is the CEO. She is incredible in every way, leading a great organization. Her partnerships with the local community, her fundraising and development skills. We're still partnering today with some work that I'm doing with the San Diego SEALs Pro Lacrosse Club. She helps nominate the people that we honor as heroes among us. She has great relationships with organizations that help put on programmatics. I've learned so much from her and others like her. So I decided to accelerate my transition by getting involved early, outside of my traditional military work.
So that brings 2 questions to mind. My first one is, the volunteering that you were doing, was there an objective at that point to what you wanted to do afterwards? Or was it merely, let me just put myself in environments and see what's going to become available? And then equal to that, you mentioned, okay, I went to U of M. It wasn't a veteran-specific program, but were you putting mentors in place that had the transition experience component as part of that process? Military transition experience.
I think I was more leaning towards people that had experience for what I was interested in moving into. I think I was doing it in a way that's a little, definitely uncomfortable, right? Definitely uncomfortable. But for me, I was thinking about the military transition as something that doesn't end on the day that I take off the uniform. And that's something I've really embraced even today. When I'm asked to speak about my transition to groups like Onward to Opportunity, North County Business Chamber, their Operation Connect, and other groups, 4 Block, the Honor Foundation, I don't say that I transitioned in 2018. I actually say that I'm still in my today's phase of transition.
When it comes to sunglasses, first responders and military members definitely don't baby them. They get dropped, thrown in a utility pocket, or tossed in gear bags. Frontline Optics was created for that reality. You get premium eye protection without paying designer brand prices for something that won't survive your lifestyle. From polarized UV 400 lenses to anti-reflective coatings and water repellent finish. And here's where Frontline Optics separates themselves from the pack. When life happens and your glasses break, they offer a no questions asked replacement program, even for prescription lenses. On top of that, Frontline Optics was founded by a firefighter, and a portion of every purchase goes to support the First Responders Children's Foundation, helping families of those who gave everything. So if you're looking for sunglasses that look good and come from a company that actually understands the job, visit frontlineoptics.com and use the promo code TRANSITION10 to get 10% off your purchase. Frontline Optics, from a first responder for the front lines.
And I've started to use the words rebirths. Like it's a series of rebirths for me. One was thinking less about myself as the commander or the helicopter pilot, and then maybe the business school student. Later, it became the jobs that I took. And now I'm actually moving into an entrepreneurial phase. And I'm really excited about that. That's what my wife and I have worked on together as what we want for ourselves and our family and the legacy we'd like to leave. So back to your question about my mentors. The mentors that I was assembling, this group, actually didn't have a lot of former military in it. I was thinking about people that could help me through or understand more about the world I was going to step into rather than the world I was transitioning from. And that there are plenty of different ways to do this. That is one of my messages. Like my path or the way that I structured my transition, or the mentors around me that supported me through my transition, were the ones that I'm really thankful for and helped me get to where I am right now. There are plenty of others who would like a little more comfort in hearing more from people who have gone through the transition that can offer them some specific ideas or steps that are related to that. I think I went a different way, and I'm happy to share with anyone any lesson learned that I have. I actually have a few that stick with me that have become part of almost like a routine in these times where I'm asked to talk about the transition. And it's become kind of fun, actually.
The reason for my question is that it sounds like you're putting pieces in place because, yeah, obviously, I know I'm going to transition. I want to go do something else. Mm-hmm. You can even go back to your time when you were in the academy. You were already thinking beyond the uniform. But at the same token, it also sounds like you wanted to, not in the sense of make it your identity, but bring the identity forward with you. Am I understanding it correctly?
That's a really good way to put it. To bring the identity forward of what's coming and take with me from my experience what's helpful and applicable. And that to me sounds and feels a lot like a metamorphosis, right? Like a stage change where, a butterfly, doesn't exactly look like a caterpillar until you look really closely and realize that maybe some of its colors came through, right? Right. So yeah, there's a bit of that. I think that right now, the way that I describe my transition or my series of transitions and rebirths, it's like when you're born. When you're born, you spend hopefully 9 months, in the comfort of one space, right? It feels one way. And then at some point, it's violent. It's different. You were breathing this comfortable fluid. Now you're breathing this air, right? And the temperature is all off. And then someone smacks you on the bottom and, makes you scream. And you didn't ask for that, right? But it's necessary. It's literally what we all go through. And maybe there are ways that it's different for some people, right? But it's just something that we go through. And when I think about changing, metamorphosizing, evolving into something else, I think about, okay, I just need to embrace that this is happening. I could look back and wish that I was in the spot I was 10 years ago. And there are some things I love about that time. But instead, I kind of choose to embrace, okay, this is what's happening now. And this is what what I hope to happen on the other side of that evolution.
Did you have anything lined up for your actual transition?
So a couple things. Yes. I went through a great program called Breakline. At the time, Breakline was in person. This is pre-COVID, and it was in the Bay Area. It was focused on transitioning high potential veterans into the technology industry. So that's what I evolved into. I have this now basic understanding of business acumen. I have this military background. I had accumulated some human resources experience at the end of my Navy career. And then I'm interested in the tech industry. So what I learned about myself was that even though at first I thought I wanted to be a tech product manager, I didn't know what a product manager was. It just sounded like a cool job title. And I learned that I didn't have the technical expertise to run a project or a product team, because that's engineering heavy. I learned that very quickly. So thankfully, one of my mentors, who is still the CEO of Brakeline, she pulled me over. We're in the Bay Area, and we were visiting an awesome, big name tech company, and they had organized us by tables based on their look at our resumes and what they thought we might be a good fit for. And I remember thinking, I want to be at the product manager table, but I didn't get invited to go over the product manager table. I got invited to the HR table. And I think she sensed like a bit of frustration on my face. So she pulled me aside and she's like, Jeremy, what's wrong? And I, what about product manager? And she's like,
I'm pouting.
Yeah, I was pouting. I was on the verge of really ruining this moment, this opportunity. And she said, Jeremy, like, you have an amazing background, but the stuff that you've done very recently in sexual assault prevention and response as an HR program manager at a big scale is something that they're very interested in. This is not something they've seen before, and they think you might be a good fit for an HR program manager position. So run with it. Like, don't turn it down. Hear what they have to say. And I did. And I'm so thankful that I did, that she redirected me, humbled me, but in the kindest, most direct way that I needed to hear at that moment. That's also a through line for a lot of my mentors, like having the courage to like be very specific about, hey, Jeremy, think about it this way. Or, hey, you're thinking about it this one way, but there's a risk here. There's a risk that you might turn them off, right? And Bethany was great about that in that moment.
You bring up a great point though, because I'll align it to something that I experienced, in that I thought that I had done all the pieces that I needed to find a good leadership position post law enforcement career. Mm-hmm. I got recommended to, got deep into the interview process for a chief of staff on a startup software company. I knew enough about computers and software to be dangerous. Beyond that, nothing. Mm-hmm. I was not a coder. I was not a programmer, but I understood how to run teams. I knew how to, you tell me what project you want to get completed, I'll make sure it gets done. And you get deep into the interview, and I was talking to the CEO, and it came down to, I need a chief of staff that when I'm not available, you can go meet with my client, help troubleshoot.
Right.
And I said, I can learn that, but I don't know that right now. And he's like, I need that right now. And so where I'm going with this is, you got your MBA. You had 4 years left to go. You came out thinking, I want to go to tech project management, but you didn't put any pieces in place to understand tech and what you potentially were going to manage. And so it would be very easy to go, well, shit, that didn't work. Now I'm not going to do anything. There's a maturity level to go, I didn't put all the pieces in place, but I have these pieces. You had somebody pull you aside and go, but this is what you're good at.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely right. That leads perfectly into the first of what I call 3 kind truths that I learned in my transition. And the first one, it sounds harsh at first, and it's about like the nuts and bolts of business, literally P&L, like profit and loss. Like, you exist as a line item on someone else's profit and loss statement. So which are you? Are you going to be the person that helps drive incremental revenue and profit? Or are you going to be the person that helps reduce costs? In this world, that's really what it's about. And it's also true like in HR. It's also true in the nonprofit space, because we don't think of them as being after profits, but they do development, they do fundraising, so they raise revenue. And if they're being efficient at what they do, they're reducing costs. So that's the real world transition that a lot of military members in transition take some time to understand. And so Bethany did it in her way. She helped me understand how the work that I had done is useful to maybe not only this company, but others. And maybe I might not be the person driving increased revenue, but maybe I'm helping them manage their people more effectively, which reduce costs. And that's a mindset shift that I had to really understand, so that I didn't go around everywhere saying, I'm a military leader, drop me in anywhere. I can learn the job. because I said the same things.
Ego is a horrible thing to have.
It really is. It really is. And now that's part of how I coach anyone going through a transition, whether it's from military into the civilian world or going from the nonprofit sector into, into the corporate space. Just understand how the things that you're great at can help this organization meet their mission. That sounds like the military or the law enforcement, the first responder mindset, meet the mission. And then you maybe have to dive a little bit deeper to understand their mission and how it translates into their business outcomes, their goals, their metrics, and be able to make that connection. This is what I bring to the table. Here's what I'm great at. Here's how it connects to your mission objectives or your business outcomes that you're looking for. And actually, I've done that before, just in a different setting.
Your retirement date was what?
Was July 1st, 2018.
And how did it feel August 10th?
So here's the mistake that I made that I would advise others to do. I didn't take any time off. I would advise.
Did you go straight into Amazon?
So I went to ServiceNow and then Amazon. So I went straight to ServiceNow, had an amazing opportunity there to lead their early career and programs and recruiting teams. And this was the team that did college recruiting, on the road, going to the University of Michigan to help recruit software engineers, going to Northwestern, recruiting heavily at University of California, San Diego, and some other UC schools and other great schools, and also thinking about innovative ways to bring in people from non-traditional backgrounds, including military and military spouses, into the tech world. So that was my first experience out of the Navy at ServiceNow. That even though that experience was only a year, it turns out that I learned enough and was able to make enough of an impact in that year that I was a strong enough candidate to join Amazon. And that was in the summer of 2019. Amazon had been a place that I'd wanted to work for as I was learning more about business, going through my MBA program, networking with people who worked there, including former service members who talk about their experience. And it sounded to me, Amazon sounded to me like the kind of place that understood what people from the military bring with them, whether it's the discipline or the ability to create order out of chaos or the ability to get after a mission for the people that understand that maybe the nature of that mission has shifted, right? And tell the good news story about it. So the ServiceNow experience, were understanding and running recruiting and programs teams, translated nicely to stepping into this growing business within Amazon of bringing in a talent and sourcing agency in-house. And that was at the front end of the huge buildup at Amazon, where Amazon went from about 500,000 employees when I started to over 1 million employees 2 years later, just in time for the pandemic. So that Amazon experience was, again, formative for me because I had to learn fast. I brought some learnings with me from the military and from ServiceNow and from the University of Michigan Business School experience. But some of the stuff that we were doing at Amazon, 2019, 2020 timeframe was insane. Like going from hiring 300 people a week to hiring 3,000 a week, like 10x, like whatever you were doing last week, do 10 times that amount next month. Their company's not about scaling at all.
No,
not at all. Not at all. And that for that scale and growth to be happening at the same time as the early days of the pandemic was madness. A lot of other companies in 2020, this is my second year at Amazon, were either shutting down or thinking about how to do everything remote. Amazon was doing almost everything at once. Some people had to shift to remote and work from anywhere. What we were doing and trying to get people into the warehouses was there's only so much we could do remotely. We actually had to lean into the in-person stuff to process the large numbers of people that were going to be coming into the warehouses to ramp up operations to help keep the economy supplied. And so we had to get very creative. I found myself, my garage in San Diego was the Amazon distribution point for PPE for teams all across Southern California. So I was getting shipments into my garage of gloves and masks and hand sanitizer, throwing them in my minivan and driving from San Diego to Thousand Oaks to Pasadena to like all over the place, all over LA, to make sure that our teams were safe while they were leaning into doing this stuff, doing this stuff in person and becoming essential workers in March of 2020.
Do you have any point where the irony aspect comes into play where you're thinking about, wait, I'm working for Amazon out of my garage?
Right. It sounds insane, and I didn't actually think about that until you just said it. But yes, yes.
We all come back to where we start.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
With that aspect, though, of Amazon, was there ever a point, like, was that a veteran program that they brought you in through? Or was there ever a component of you being a veteran that facilitated getting that job? Or was it simply just something that this is also what I'm bringing to the table, but it wasn't a component of what they were looking for?
It's the last one. It wasn't what they were looking for, because I had originally applied through the military pathways program. That would have led to an operations role in a warehouse. And because at that time, when I first applied, the locations were not in places that we were looking to move to because of my son's special needs, I declined that opportunity. A year later was when they were looking for someone to run what we called workforce staffing, which is this staffing operation in LA. And it just so happens that I had a logistics background and I had learned enough about human resources to be dangerous, and to apply that to the operations of recruiting. And I was very lucky. My director, this guy was a West Point grad that went to MIT Sloan for his MBA. So he looked at my background and could see enough similarities. Greg Zielinski, this guy's amazing, could see enough similarities in our backgrounds that he felt comfortable taking a leap on me and giving me a chance to compete for the role. He didn't give me the job. He was like, okay, I see enough I understand his background. Let's give him an opportunity to compete. In competing for that role, what I had to do, we talked earlier about working backwards from the goal, is to really study and understand two things: the Amazon interviewing system and what they're looking for, the STAR format, situation, task, action, result, use numbers, use metrics, but also understand the business that I was stepping into and what their acute problems were. And working not only backwards from those problems, but like my skills that connect to solving those problems. So it turned out that in 2019, when Greg Zielinski was dreaming up this bigger operation that could hire many, many, many more people, and he's thinking about scale, can I find leaders that can understand our business, but also operate across geographies? Maybe he lives in San Diego, his teams are in Los Angeles, he's doing other kinds of support for teams around the country, and he had this understanding or this trust that some of my military background mapped to that, but he wasn't the one I was interviewing with. I had an interview with this other panel of Amazonians who were going to drill me, and they were going to ask me these tough behavioral interview questions. And when I gave a number or I gave a percentage in one of my stories, they would drill down and ask me the components of that number. Like if I said I brought cost savings, tell me about the components of those cost savings. Were they operation? Were they headcount? What kind of efficiencies did you extract? And I had to use their language, not mine, not my military language. I had to use their language to convey what I brought to the table. And so I was thankful that he was there to give me that shot to compete. But I had to be a student of their business problem and their language to be able to communicate it.
I'm kind of laughing because I've had conversations with people and they'll talk about, going into an interview, and it's very easy to go, I led teams and I'm sure a lot of people hope that that's where the question stops. Yes. And they're very thankful. I oversaw a budget of $20 million.
Right?
Well, wait a minute. Give us a little, and that's the thing though that I think trips a lot of us up.
That's right.
Is because through the 20 or 30 years that we've spent in these careers, a lot of times our promotions aren't necessarily about the nuts and bolts of what the assignment requires. It's more of you just hit the check boxes that you've done these aspects of the assignment.
Right.
And so we really don't ever have to explain how our presence really altered or improved or, and when you do get to explain that, it's easier to just kind of give the wave tops. So
to take it one step further, people that are interviewing, and it could be someone coming from the military or someone coming from another company, really need to get comfortable talking about the I stories, not the we stories. Because just like you were saying, the wave tops or the surface version of that story is really just talking about, I was on this great team. I was on this SWAT team. I was in this helicopter squadron. We did great things at a important time in history. 2 years later, when I was on the other side of the interviewer table and I was interviewing veterans, I was actually listening for the we stories. And every time I heard a we story, this is sad. This is sad that I was doing this, but I was thinking, another we story. They're not telling me the I story. I don't know what their individual contribution was to that team or that outcome that they're celebrating. Guess what? I could hire anyone on their team. I might be able to hire someone else on their team that's cheaper for us. and I'd heard that was a thing. And I found myself, once I found myself doing it as an interviewer, that's when I realized, okay, that this should be part of my giving back to the community, helping to coach veterans and military spouses transitioning law enforcement on how to tell the I stories and claim their value as an individual to the team effort and show how they delivered at scale. And that has been very rewarding. That's part of my three kind truths.
Before we get into your now cell phone business, what took you from Amazon? And was it by choice? Was it another opportunity that presented itself, or were you going and looking for something specific?
So the business is a gym, actually. Yeah.
We're going to get there.
Yeah. But anyway, leaving Amazon was...
Well, then let me take you backwards.
Yeah.
Did you leave Amazon to start the gym?
No.
Okay.
I left Amazon to work for a smaller company. I became an HR director, and then I transitioned from that into becoming an HR consultant. And so at that point, I was still thinking about my next steps on the HR path, HR leadership path. What happened in that time frame at the same time was a personal, and a physical transformation that was really, really, really critical for me. So I'm working as an HR consultant, and there's a time when I couldn't get out of bed. My body was breaking down, but also my body was signaling to me that I wasn't treating it well after the years of service, right? The helicopter flying, the high G flying as a flight instructor, and I couldn't get out of bed. And my wife says to me, Jeremy, you need help. You need to go to your VA doctor and tell him what you're going through. And you need to maybe get into some physical therapy, and you need to come to my gym, Burn Boot Camp Poway, which was where she was attending. And when she told me those things so directly, just like my mentor, just like my mom, I could hear it, and it got through to me, got through to this thick skull. And I heard those 3 steps, and I did them in order. I was like, okay, let me talk to my VA primary. Let me tell him what I'm going through. A lot of this was already documented. He said, great, let me get you a referral for physical therapy. That physical therapist already had a relationship with the gym, Burn Boot Camp in Poway. And he's like, okay, I get it. You need your range of motion back. You need your mobility. You need strength and endurance. And I hear you that you want to go work out at this gym. Let me help prepare you for that. I started working at the gym, and I felt more comfortable asking for help, like we talked about before, and telling the trainers, hey, listen, I've got neck, back, shoulder injuries. And if you tell me to lift weights, I'm going to do it, but I might take a mod. You're telling me, everyone else is lifting 20 pounds. I might take that 10-pound weight and do what I can right now, and asking for that support. It took about a year to get to the point where I felt like I got my strength, my mobility, my endurance back. And the primary reason for it wasn't just for me. It was because I also needed to be there for David, our son, who's the wheelchair user who struggles with cerebral palsy. And I have to be his muscle. I have to be his balance. Who's going to get him out of bed and change his diaper and into his wheelchair and onto the bus if I'm stuck in bed? So that transformation for me brought things full circle in a new way, because after a year, I'm feeling better. I'm still getting support from the VA, and I'm really thankful for that, but I'm better able to be there for myself so that I could be there for David. And the founder of the gym is doing a roadshow explaining how they're expanding and looking for new franchise partner owners. And they really want to lean into members and employees as owners to help keep that culture going, the positive culture that's working in this gym environment, keep it going and help them grow. And that message resonated and hit me at the right time. And I raised my hand and said, I want to learn more.
Real quick, I want to ask this. The injury aspect, anything significant that comes from 20 years in the Navy? Like
absolutely.
Crash or, I mean.
So no, these were compounded little injuries. Like a football player, like maybe didn't have one big concussion that knocked them out, but they had lots of little ones that added up. For me, it was years and years of the vibrations in the helicopters, sitting in poor posture because of the gear and the helmet and the night vision goggles and the weight. And then when I was flying fixed wing, pulling 7.5 Gs in one of the aircraft without even a G suit, and literally having to strain against that weight of now weighing 1,400 pounds instead of 200 pounds to deliver training to the next generation of students. All of that added up together for, lots of injuries that just hit me at the same time. It felt like it was something about those compounding together and my age, right? That just hit me like a ton of bricks. And
so then prior to that day when your wife pointed out the 3 points that you needed to do, was your vision for your future HR consulting?
Yes.
Was that the path you were on?
That was the path. And I was not only struggling with how do I sustain this, like if my body can't like hold it up, I was starting to think about and looking at the environment around me and like, is that career path? It is still viable. I think it is still viable, but the nature of it was changing fast around me. This is the 2022 to 2024 timeframe. In the 2022 and 23 timeframe, I'm at Amazon when some layoffs are happening, and I'm the HR leader helping to guide people through them. And then in the 2024 into 2025 timeframe, that trend is starting to move to other companies and other industries. And it's not just the nature of the layoffs themselves. It's we're starting to move into the question of, with the onset of AI, do companies need this number of people? Do companies need these layers of management? That part right there, do these companies need these middle layers of management? I think directly impacts transitioning service members, military spouses, law enforcement who are imagining themselves moving into management layers after their service. So being understanding of those trends and understanding how to learn quickly to be valuable in this changing environment was something that I was like struggling with. How do I even coach through that at the same time that my body is fighting me?
Staying in that vein though, from a coaching aspect, for somebody who might be coming to their transition and has an interest in staying in that management, leadership, HR vein, what's your advice as far as embracing, utilizing, learning AI as it relates to that?
Well, yeah, my advice is to just get comfortable with it. It's going to be uncomfortable at first. Jump in. There are enough of them that are still free, enough of those services and enough of those platforms and applications that are still free that allow you to play enough to get dangerous. There are plenty of certifications that are still free right now from those same companies that allow you to learn the fundamentals of really just asking good questions to the AI and applying good judgment to the responses that you get from it. Think of it like having a really, really smart researcher that's happy to do work for you, and they're really fast at what they do, and they're sometimes messy. And they're anticipating what you're asking for and anticipating the response that they're formulating the response as you're asking the question. And sometimes that doesn't work in like human conversations, right?
Doesn't work at all. It's annoying sometimes. It's like, I didn't ask you 3 parts to this. Just answer the one part that I asked you.
I feel like that's where a lot of AI is today. Trying to get ahead of itself. Just answer the question. And playing with it and getting dirty with it enough so that you can get to the point where you're just getting more efficient at your work. So right now, one of the ways I'm playing with AI is to come up with examples of, say, an employee manual, right? And of course, I have examples from other successful gym owners in our franchise, and I might want to put my spin on it, but I also want to make it California compliant, right? So these are ways that I can utilize AI to get to something incrementally, not just better, but like more tailored for my use. But I can't just take that and copy and paste it. I've got to run through it and make sure that the thing that I asked for to be California compliant is actually California compliant, or else I'm in deep doo-doo.
Are you saying that AI gets some things wrong?
All the time.
God.
And then another piece that I can imagine advising a transitioning service member, military spouse, someone coming from a first responder career, is to, if you're going to practice something while you're in the phase where the stakes are a little bit, lower, it's not like your career's on the line. Think about using it to support projects that are maybe slightly outside of what your comfort zone is. So I went and started volunteering with organizations that were outside the scope of the military. So if I were doing that today, I would think about offering to an organization that I felt passionate about. Maybe it's reducing harm to animals, right? Hey, I would love to help you out with what projects are you working on right now? Can I volunteer my time to help accelerate your work because I'm passionate about it? They'd be happy probably to have that kind of help. And these might be opportunities to test your project management skills and get comfortable with using AI to refine, whether it's writing, maybe coding. It's actually getting much better at coding in the last year or two. And then apply your judgment layer on top of it. This is what I bring from me. This is what I bring with me from the military that helps me bring order to chaos. Those 3 things together, that could be valuable.
I think that component, though, especially if you're in the later stages of your career, coming towards your transition, that volunteering aspect is saying that it's invaluable, I think, is a true understatement, because of the environments that you can allow yourself to get into and the people that you can allow yourself to get in front of simply by volunteering your time and not expecting anything back from it per se.
Right. Absolutely right. Every time I've done that, the organizations have been really happy to have that kind of support. And it turns out that they need it badly, because another thing that's true in this economy right now is that fundraising and development for nonprofits is getting much harder. It just is. So if someone wants to, there's 3 main things that you can offer. There's time, talent, and treasure, right? So maybe you may not have a lot of money right now to apply to a passion project, but maybe if you carve out some talent of your own and your time to something that's important to them, that sometimes that's more valuable than a couple of dollars that you might be able to throw them.
So getting into the gym industry, how was that for you? And what was the learning curve? Like, what did Burn require you to do to be a franchisee?
Yeah. So Burn required, most franchisors do this. They look at everything. They look at your finances. They look at your background and what you bring to the table in terms of a resume. And they also look at like your alignment and passion for what they do. So for me, it turned out that even though in the middle, my resume didn't look like gym operator, because I was never a gym operator or owner before. I think that they looked at the things that I do have, which is the business school, the military experience, my experience leading, supporting, motivating teams to do hard things, meshed nicely with my story. I experienced a positive transformation through this system. Like, I feel better. I'm not healed. I still, go to the VA, but I'm in a much better position to help myself so that I can be there and show up for my family. By the way, when I go to burn boot camp, Poway right now, and mine is going to be in Sorrento Valley, I have extra energy that I bring with me that I can transfer to others. Our culture is a lot about high fives, a lot about encouragement, a lot of women and family members that attend burn boot camp. And that meshes so nicely with what they're trying to do and what they're trying to grow as a culture around the United States and maybe beyond. It turns out that I looked like the profile that they were hoping for in franchisees. So I had to prove that I had the financial background to be stable enough to take this risk, that I knew enough about running a business to deliver, and that I'm passionate about what we can do as a brand. First in my first gym, Burn Boot Camp Sorrento Valley, and then maybe a few others in the future, to bring that goodness to more people.
The aspect of when you're saying that, I'm thinking back to the comment that you made, like, I'm a kid. I don't know if I want to go when you were talking about like selected between the Marine Corps and the Navy.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if I really like that much structure, kind of the hippie at heart. Yeah. Are you given a little bit of free rein to make your burn location maybe a little different than the next one? Or is it very much regimented that, hey, if I go to Burn Boot Camp Sorrento Valley, or if I go to Burn Boot Camp Springfield, Missouri, that it's identically going to be the same or very close to the same?
Great question. From the member experience, or even if you're coming for the first time on a trial membership, we call it the BCE, the Blue Carpet Experience. That should be the same in Missouri or Florida or Sorrento Valley, California. And here's what that looks like. It's amazing, actually. You're going to sign up in advance. You're going to do your waivers online. And if you're coming for the first time on a trial membership, someone's waiting outside to high five you and with, hey, Paul, like, they're going to greet you by name. You're going to have a cubby with your name on it. They're going to call you out to make sure that everyone there welcomes you. You're going to get some extra attention during that camp environment. It's high intensity interval training. It's a mix of strength and endurance, and conditioning. And then at the end of that camp, you're going to get some more love, and they're going to ask you how you felt about it. And they're going to ask, hey, what brings you here? But what are you really looking for? It's usually one of the 3 C's. It's usually commitment, consistency, or community, or some group of those. That part's going to be the same anywhere. What I get some flexibility to do for myself, for my team, to make Burn Sorrento Valley distinct and great for us, I got some support from senior leadership to maybe lean into recruiting and hiring military spouses. So I bring with me not only the military background, but now I have an HR and recruiting and HR and employee engagement background that I bring with me from my corporate experience, where we know what military and military spouses bring to the table. I would love to operationalize that, prove that in Burn Sorrento Valley, and then become a feeder for other burn locations around the country. So imagine someone who's a military spouse from Marine Corps Air Station Miramar comes to work for me, and their spouse gets transferred to North Carolina. You better believe that my first phone call is going to be to my fellow franchise partner in North Carolina. Hey, they're headed your way. They're amazing. You're going to love having them there. If there's a spot, I couldn't endorse them more. And that, I think, is something that we're going to grow into, that I'm getting a lot of support from HQ to do some cool things like that.
I think that's one of the cool aspects of people can look at becoming a franchisee or a business owner, but I'm going to focus on the franchisee aspect. Yeah. And in a weird way, almost kind of take a step back in the sense that, hey, this is what Burn wants. This is as much as I'm going to do. Whereas even in a franchisee environment, you can still look for aspects to grow either just your location or grow the company as a whole.
I love that you brought that up. My mentors within the Byrne organization are the franchise partners and the owners at Byrne Poway. They own Byrne Poway and Byrne Oceanside, and they welcomed me in a beautiful way. They welcomed my son. I rolled him in his wheelchair into Child Watch, and they were like, come on in. You want to watch some sports? Let's put on some sports for you. And he just had an amazing time every time he went. So my family felt welcome, right? They, as mentors, are modeling some amazing behaviors where they don't feel threatened by my opportunity to launch a new location in their backyard. They're all for it. Like, they want my success. And then when we're thinking about new geographies, I feel comfortable talking to them to say, hey, what are your thoughts about your next phase or your next step? Here are my thoughts about our next phase and step. We are collaborating as neighbors, as neighboring franchise partners and franchisees, so that when we go and talk to HQ about what we're thinking about doing next, HQ's like, awesome, great plan, rather than maybe in some other franchises or other relationships, maybe it seems a little bit more like they're competing over the same slice of, or the same pie. We're thinking more about growing the pie.
With you now getting involved in the fitness industry, do you think this is your final anchor point for the remainder of your life, your career, whatever it is? Or do you still have other ideas kind of ruminating in your head?
I am laser focused on this. I got to get this first location off the ground. We got to get to we got to get on a growth path first beyond, break even to success, so I can think about locations 2, 3, and 4. It's going to be, I think, a while before the things that are in the back of my mind come up again. And I have to lean in this way, because I think left to my own devices, I might be a little bit more about thinking about other opportunities sooner. But that's where my wife and I, as partners here, are yin and yang in a really nice way. I have more the visionary focus, and I'm going to be focused more on the gym, our employees, and the community. She's our CFO. She's going to be more focused on actually strategy and like helping moderate some of my influences, right? Some of my influences are,
calm down.
I'm the irrational optimist. Let's do it all. She's our logic center. And we work together right now really well. And we've been doing it for a year. And so I think that that's a good testament to our opportunity ahead of us to really make this work. Years down the road, I'm sure there'll be some other ideas that don't conflict with this one. We want this to be our legacy for our family, for the San Diego community and beyond.
Speaking of San Diego, with you being from New York, your wife, I believe you said she's from Michigan?
Right.
Any desires to get more East Coast based, or you think you and your wife and your family are West Coast anchored?
I think we found our home, right? But what's great about the way our families are evolving is, my brother and sister and their kids, my mom and dad in New York, there's a nonstop direct flight every day from San Diego to New York. And her mom moved from Michigan here to San Diego to be with us. And so we're actually in the middle of an expansion on our home to accommodate grandma. And I know it sounds crazy, like construction on the house, launching a business, whatever. We'll make it work.
Throw the hand grenade in the middle of your life. What's the worst that could happen?
Why not?
You'll make it work. I'm sure you will.
Thank you.
Any last pieces of advice to kind of take us out as far as transition? Anything that you want to make sure somebody understands from your experience getting out of the military, moving into the civilian world?
Absolutely. I hinted earlier that I've got 3 kind truths, and I gave you the first one, which is the reality of what a company is looking for, right? And we, as transitioning service members, need to understand how we fit into that. That was number 1. Number 3, I told you all about my struggles with really fighting my body fighting me, and realizing that I had to take care of myself so that I could be present for my family, so that I can be there and be David's strength and be his muscle. I call that one, I am wonderfully made. That's something I take from the scripture, from Psalms. And I'm reminded that if I take care of myself and I think about my inputs and doing it a little bit differently than I did 10 years ago, right? Let's be smarter about what I put into the body. Let's be smarter about my habits over the course of the week and the month and the quarter and the year so that I can do this stuff. That was the second one. But the third one, which I take from my business school experience and I learned it in the real world, is what actually separates great leaders on great teams from others. And there's actually research behind this that my professors from University of Michigan Raw School of Business put together. It was Sue Ashford and Scott DeRue. They were both teaching me in 2012 to 2014. And here's what's surprising. It's the two qualities, the two one-word qualities that these great leaders on great teams have that distinguish them from others is warmth and competency. The lesson for transitioning service members, military spouses, first responders, I think we got the competency part.
I would have thought for sure you were going to say the warmth part.
With a little work, with a little coaching, we learn how to translate the work that we did into something that's useful to another organization. I think we need to work on the warmth part. And we're warm with each other because we served in the foxholes together. We get extremely awkward.
But even the way we deliver warmth to each other is probably not optimal, especially from somebody who's worked in the HR world.
Right. We get coached all the time on it. I was an HR leader getting coached on how I spoke by other HR leaders, right? And I feel like and I was asked, okay, how do we accelerate? How do we get to that warmth piece quicker? And I really think it's about stepping out of your comfort zone sooner. It's telling your story and claiming your value, learning a new language, and just re-entering that process, re-entering that feedback loop so that you can feel, as the transitioning member, feel more comfortable in your own skin so that when you're storytelling, it just comes off as organic. It comes off like a conversation. And I think that's a quicker way to get to that warmth piece that matches the competence that we already bring.
I would say, to me, it's warmth is a good word, but it's genuine. Get beyond this ego that we have.
Yeah.
And just be genuine with people.
You couldn't have said it any better.
I appreciate your time. I thank you for coming up and sharing your story with me. I wish you all the best going forward.
Thank you, brother.
As always, thank you for listening or watching the episode. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to reach out on social media or send me an email. The links are all in the show notes. I'd love to hear from you. Also, if you're not already, please follow the podcast on whatever platform you get your podcasts. You can also subscribe on YouTube. And if you would, please leave me a rating. Ratings do two things. You can tell me what I need to fix or improve, and the more ratings also gets the podcast recommended to more people. Another ask, please share the podcast with anyone you think could benefit from and enjoy it. And last, don't forget, sign up for the newsletter.